The world is not random. The world is moving in the direction it is because it's been planned to do that. These entities operate in the unseen, overwhelmingly in the unseen. They want to control the information that people receive. One of the greatest forms of mind control, repetition, repetition, repetition.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 If you want people to have a certain perception of a world event, the world in general, of who we are and the nature of reality, then control what people receive and then control their perception. Once they've got your perceptions, they've got you. Given the mathematics, you can't physically control your target population. There's not enough of you. Yes, you can do it through people in uniform, which is manipulating the target population to police the target population, but you can't do it en masse. What you need to do is control the perceptions of the population, because perception is everything. Perception dictates what you believe, what you don't believe, what you'll challenge, what you won't challenge, what you'll accept, you won't accept, support, everything. Once they've got your perceptions, they've got you. And they've got your life, and they've got the collective perception, they have humanity. This is why they want to control the information that people receive and to marginalize alternative ways of looking at the world, because where do perceptions come from? They come from information received. It might be a personal experience, information, or it might be the 10 o'clock news. But with most people, it's going to be the 10 o'clock news, but it's information. So if you want people to have a certain perception of a world event, the world in general, of who we are and the nature of reality, then control what people receive, and then you'll control their perception.
You see, basically this media or this elite group has also always been very close to the elite media in our country. In fact, in a speech to the Bilderberger Group, easy for me to say, David Rockefeller made an amazing admission. He said, "We are grateful to the media whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the light of publicity." So in this age when people are decrying fake news, we're just getting the memo. The news has been manufactured and massaged and shaped and presented. It's been emphasized in one area and total neglect of other areas for a very long time. So that when we look at groups like the Bilderbergers, who are kind of secretive, even though they're composed of the wealthiest, most powerful, most important people on the planet by man's standard, we know nothing about their meetings, and the media who are invited to be there, whether they be from major newspapers or from major networks, or now even with people like Jeff Bezos, who is also part of their group, they have agreed that they'll keep their meetings secret and their discussions private.
And these guys are really important. And if we don't do something about these guys, the kids that are starting school now, by the time they come out of school, by the time they come out of college in another 10 years, they're not going to have any reference point for what freedom could have looked like or what the world could have been, because they're all getting locked into this digital world. They're getting locked into this iPad world. So they want kids to have iPads at very early ages. But what do we do to the kids now? They're born, we fill them full of poisons. The government loves to do that on the guise of helping them. And then what do we do with our home lives? We put them in front of the TV and we let the TV look after them. We send them off to the education system. They get trained to be little clones. They go out into the world. They get caught in the credit trap. They end up locked into that, and that's their life. And they sit back and pretend to enjoy it. This guy's having a great time. Got his beer, got his chips, got his remote control. His team's winning. He doesn't even notice that he's chained to a wall of debt.
So when I look at the world, I see vast numbers of people who are perceptually programmed. And when I you know, like I break it down in the book, when you look at a human life, it's basically a perceptual programming and download from cradle to grave.
Because what we've got in the world is not really a political system. What we've got in the world, encompassing all governments in all countries, is a criminal class that's running the world. People call it an oligarchy. I call it a cacistocracy. It's a cacistocracy. This is a word that was taken out of the dictionary about 100 years ago. It's a real word. Cacistocracy defined as governance by the worst elements of society who govern exclusively in their own interest and to the permanent detriment of all other classes.
You see, David Rockefeller was just one, but certainly probably in his lifetime at the top of the clique. But he's part of an extremely wealthy clique who viewed themselves as being the hereditary elite of the world. In fact, in a Rockefeller Brothers Fund special report that they released in 1959, they made the following statement: "Some men are born to rule, but some men are born to be ruled. We cannot escape the task which history has imposed upon us, helping shape a new world order in all of its dimensions: spiritual, economic, political, and social." Now, that may sound like terrible arrogance to you, but you see, men like David Rockefeller and his likes, they look back and say, we, like the Rothschilds and other famous families around the world, we have been wealthy beyond comprehension since 300-400 years ago and even beyond. They are what we call ancient money, not just old money. They are ancient money. They have had money since that as far back as anybody can remember, and they have concluded that it's a consequence of their genetic makeup. Now, that may sound really strange to you, but when you listen to some of the less than public commentary by many of those who are part of the new elite, whether it be Elon Musk or Bezos or some of these other people, they believe that they are evolved further along the chain of evolutionary progression than the rest of us. That the reason that they are making the monies that they do and hold the positions and creating the things they're creating is because they're either chosen by some mystical spiritual force, or they themselves are just inherently further evolved than the rest of us. And therefore, they have the right to rule. They have the right to control, and they also have the right not to be questioned or examined closely by the things that they do.
They have manipulated human perception by manipulating the information people receive. The plan is to go beyond that, where they are the perception. And what I'm talking about, of course, is artificial intelligence. Which brings us back to the devil's playground, Silicon Valley. Because that is increasingly the center. In the shadows is where it's coming from. But in terms of the world that you can see, Silicon Valley is becoming the center of global control. Not only is it driving, people will be shocked to see how deep Google, oh, it's just a search engine, and Facebook, oh, it's just a social media platform. To see how deep they are in the transhumanist agenda of connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence so that artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. And that's not me pulling this out of the ether. I'm quoting there a Google executive, Ray Kurzweil, one of the global PR men for Frankenstein.
Is he a Google exec? I know he's at Singularity University.
He's a Google exec at the Singularity University. Okay. And he has said that by 2030, and that's a date, a year that keeps coming up again and again, 2030, the human brain will be started to be connected to artificial intelligence. And I'm quoting Kurzweil here. And then artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until there is no human thought and artificial intelligence is doing it all. Now, why are they openly saying this now? Because the sales pitch is it will make us superhuman. So isn't that great? Getting the population, especially the young, or will be the adults then, addicted to technology is all about the here, kitty, 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 preparing people to accept this. So you've got that agenda. at the end of this road of the human mind as we know it being replaced by artificial intelligence. But out of the same, as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, out of the same devil's playground, Silicon Valley, is coming the Google, Facebook, etc., algorithmic censorship more and more of the alternative media using various excuses. Because what they do is this, they'll give you an excuse, oh, we've got to stop jihadis. Okay, right. So, oh yeah, we'll stop jihadis. Okay. And then they widen it and widen it. It's not jihadis anymore, it's people like me. It's and other people that are questioning the official narrative, and they pull them in. So the alternative media is under tremendous pressure now and suppression because it's challenging the narrative, and that changes perception. Change perception, you change the world.
And I even look at some of this. I've had a really interesting philosophical look at it lately. Even looking at it, looking at things, and I'm not religious at all, but looking at things such as the end times and biblical stories and all this sort of stuff, the creation of Lucifer. What is Lucifer? Lucifer is the bearer of light. Well, what is light? Light is information. What gives us more light than anything? The internet is the bearer of light. And what does the word Lucifer means? Lucas is light and cipher is code. So the code that bears the light, it's an interesting thing. We've created this system ourselves, and we're transferring all of our knowledge to this system and all of our skills to this system. It's removing us of our life skills. The young kids are losing their life skills, even their ability to communicate with each other properly without texting to each other. Everyone's addicted to dopamine because every time you click an icon on your iPhone, you get a little dopamine hit. So kids are measuring their lives by the pleasure of each moment. How much that is they're able to enjoy each moment they perform. So that's where we're being led into. So this whole system, it's basically removing humanity of all of our life skills. It's gathering all the knowledge of humanity, and it's getting to the point where it could just shut us out. And it's an interesting thing, it's an interesting thing. If you look at ancient witchcraft and all this sort of stuff, and you look at things such as sigils used for summoning demons and things like scrying mirrors. Have you ever heard of a scrying mirror? A scrying mirror is a black mirror that witches or warlocks would look into to see the future or the past. And it's just a black glass mirror. And it's said to show you the future or the past. You arrange certain sigils and the scrying mirror comes into action. The sigils, when you look at the sigils, these people, they'll sort of paint these diagrams and sigils around the place, and they'll do their pentagram, and they'll sit there with their scrying mirror, and they think they're summoning demons. But really, when you look at it, some of these sigils, they look suspiciously like electronic diagrams. They look like electronic parts. They look like resistors and transistors and signal flow. They look like the stuff that you see in your computer. And you put all these sigils together and this energy is created, and you create this force. And suddenly you look into your scrying mirror and you can see the future or the past. And here we are using these scrying mirrors to summon this force, the bearer of light. It's an interesting thing. And I look at some of these ancient myths, and I look at them and think, what if these aren't myths? What if these were put there as a warning that when you see these sigils in use and you see these scrying mirrors in use, watch out, because you're going to summon the bearer of light. And that's going to give you all the information you need to change the world, give you everything you need to really step into who and what you are, and it's going to be what you do with it. But if you worship it and you think it's this great all thing that's going to save your life and you give all your power to it, it's going to turn on you and it's going to just take it all from you. And that's the end of this cycle. And then we start again. What if that's really what's going on? I find that quite interesting. Like I said, I'm not religious, but I look at all this and I've got to put it in context. So I think it's pretty interesting that we're using these things now, and everyone's carrying around their mobile phone, their little scrying mirror. They're looking at the future and the past. They've got all these sigils in there and all this energy, this electricity. Where does it even come from? Electricity is something we still don't understand. It just happens when you put these sigils together. This energy is created. What is this energy? Is that what they call demons? I don't know. It's an interesting concept.
But you see, the real enemy, the real conspirator in this whole thing, and people say, well, these are just conspiracy theories. Well, there are conspiracies. It's only a theory if you can't show that it's real. This is a conspiracy. It's right out in the open. In fact, if I get to it today, some of the very key players in this process openly admit that they are part of a cabal, of a conspiracy to bring about one world government. Readily admit it. But the real power and force behind it, the motivation, the inspiration, the insight, the power and capacity to accomplish what they do, to accumulate the wealth and the power that they can use to bring these things to pass, comes from Lucifer, from the devil, from his demonic minions that serve his purpose of world domination. That his goal is to dethrone the church, to dehumanize mankind, to dominate us by lusts and evil thinking and ways, and ultimately to destroy mankind in an effort to affront God, who says we were created in his image. That he literally wants to smudge and smear that image so that we no longer bear any resemblance in character or morality, but we look more like the devil himself.
So Apple News Plus, over 300 great magazines. The Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, those great premium digital subscriptions. There's literally never been an offer like this before. If you were to subscribe to all of these individually, it would cost you over $8,000 per year. But with Apple News Plus, you pay $9.99 per month.